My name is Dr. Evelyn Reed. For years I chased forgotten words, believing truth lay buried in dusty archives. That's what brought me to the Sterling University Library, specifically its sector of rare and forbidden archives. They say books hold stories. Here, they hold consciousness. And they watch. There are 7 rules I learned, whispered by the ancient silence of the stacks. Rules about what you hear, what you touch, and most crucially, never, ever read the last page of any book, because they know your name, and the thirst for forbidden knowledge can lead you to the ultimate truth, one where the stories become you, and you become part of their unending narrative. I used to be a brilliant linguist, specializing in dead languages and forgotten dialects. My life was devoted to reconstructing lost narratives, giving voice to the voiceless. But my research took a personal turn 6 years ago when my younger sister, Clara, suffered a catastrophic stroke. She survived, but the part of her that spoke, that remembered her past, that understood her own story, it vanished. Her mind became a blank page, her history erased. Doctors called it aphasia and amnesia. I called it a lost language, a narrative screaming to be found. I became obsessed with the idea that if I could reconstruct forgotten tales, I could reawaken hers. This desperate hope led me to the Sterling University Library. The library itself was a Gothic monument to knowledge, all dark wood, soaring ceilings, and stained glass windows depicting forgotten scholars. But the rare and forbidden archives deep in the sub-basement was another beast entirely. It was a labyrinth of cold stone, iron gratings, and towering shelves that stretched into perpetual gloom. The air was thick with the scent of aged parchment, dust, and something else. Something faintly metallic, like old blood mixed with ozone. It was perpetually cold, a chill that seemed to seep into your bones, not from lack of heating, but from the sheer weight of dormant, potent information. The job, night archivist, was notoriously difficult to fill. The pay was surprisingly good, but the turnover rate was almost legendary. 3 archivists in the last year alone had quit without explanation, leaving their personal effects behind, muttering about whispers and shifting truths. I dismissed it as overactive imaginations fueled by long hours in isolation. My intellect, my academic rigor, would protect me from mere superstitions. On my first night, the head librarian, a gaunt, perpetually shadowed man named Professor Elias Thorne, greeted me. His eyes, a piercing gray, seemed to hold the weight of centuries of unspoken words. He moved with a quiet precision, his footsteps barely disturbing the dust motes dancing in the faint light. He handed me a single, leather-bound volume. Not a guide, but a journal. Its pages were filled with elegant, spidery script, detailing the library's true rules. "This isn't a manual, Doctor. Read," Thorne rasped, his voice a dry whisper that seemed to come from the very stacks around us. "It's a covenant. These 7 rules are the difference between preserving knowledge and becoming knowledge. Break them, and you don't just lose your job, you lose your narrative. And Evelyn," he added, his gaze sweeping the endless shelves, "never, ever let your thirst for truth overshadow the value of your own story." I scoffed internally. Rules were designed to organize, not to mystify. But as I read through Thorne's journal, the words began to seep into my consciousness, each warning a subtle tremor, in the profound silence of the archives. Here are the rules, as meticulously recorded in Professor Thorne's faded journal. Rule number 1, do not read the last page of any book. They know your name. To finish a narrative here is to invite its ending into your own. Thorne's warning. The truth of these texts is hungry. It consumes all who complete its story. Rule number 2. If you hear a book whisper your name from its shelf, do not respond. Its voice seeks acknowledgement, and to grant it is to invite its story to merge with yours. Thorne's warning. Their forgotten tales seek a new vessel, a new life. Your response is their entry point. Rule number 3. Should you find a book out of place, particularly a blank journal, do not open it. Report its location to the head archivist immediately. Thorne's warning. Blank pages here are never truly empty. They await a narrative, and your curiosity is the ink. Rule number 4. If the archives appear to shift, a new aisle, a rearranged section, a door that wasn't there, do not investigate. Continue your duties as if nothing has changed. Thorne's warning. The library rearranges itself to reveal hidden truths. Your observation validates its new reality, drawing you deeper into its labyrinth. Rule number 5. Never engage with the readers. They appear as shadowy figures hunched over texts, their faces obscured. They are not patrons. Their thirst for knowledge has long since consumed them. Thorne's warning. Their studies are eternal. To interrupt is to join them, forever bound to their endless pursuit. Rule number 6. If you find a personal item, particularly something beloved or sentimental, left in an empty study carrel, do not touch it. Report it. Thorne's warning. These are anchors, remnants of those absorbed by the archives. To touch them is to invite their fate. Rule number 7. The ancient clock in the central reading room must never stop. If its ticking ceases, evacuate the archives immediately and do not return until dawn. Thorne's warning. The clock's rhythm maintains the boundary between stories and reality. Its silence means the lines have blurred. I closed the journal, a strange thrill of intellectual curiosity mingling with a prickle of unease. These weren't just rules, they were a literary puzzle, a challenge to my academic prowess. My ambition to unlock Clara's lost narrative saw them not as warnings, but as intriguing clues. I was ready to delve into the depths. My first few weeks were exhilarating. The archives hummed with a quiet energy I'd never experienced. I found inspiration in its ancient silence, losing myself for hours among forgotten texts. My research into historical memory and narrative reconstruction felt sharper, my insights more profound. I felt closer to understanding Clara's condition. One night, around 1 a.m., I was meticulously recataloguing a collection of obscure Babylonian tablets. The air was cold still, save for the faint hum of the ancient climate control system. Then I heard it. A whisper, impossibly soft, yet crystalline clear. Evelyn. Rule number 2. If you hear a book whisper your name from its shelf, do not respond. Its voice seeks acknowledgement, and to grant it is to invite its story to merge with yours. My heart leapt. It was my name, perfectly enunciated, coming from a shelf of medieval illuminated manuscripts. My intellect screamed auditory hallucination, sleep deprivation. But a part of me, the part desperate to find answers for Clara, yearned to respond, to engage with the source of such a profound, impossible sound. I hesitated, my hand hovering over a particularly ornate tome bound in faded crimson leather. "Evelyn, your sister's story. It's here." That was the hook. My sister. My desperate quest. I should have ignored it. I should have walked away, but my need was too great. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The moment the words left my lips, a shiver ran through the entire stack. Not a physical tremor, but a ripple of cold, ancient energy. The faint whispers swelled, no longer coming from a single book, but from the entire shelf, a chorus of hushed voices murmuring fragments of unfamiliar narratives, tangled with memories that felt almost personal. It was overwhelming, a cacophony of lost voices vying for attention. I clutched my head, the sudden influx of fragmented thoughts too much. Professor Thorne's warning echoed. To grant it is to invite its story to merge with yours. I felt a subtle drain, a warmth leaving my body, replaced by a cold intellectual clarity, as if a part of my own narrative had been exchanged for 1,000 untold tales. The books on the shelf seemed to glow faintly, their stories now somehow clearer, more potent. I had not just heard them, I had absorbed them. The next morning, Professor Thorne looked at me with an odd expression. "Long night, Dr. Reed," he rasped. "You look more learned." I just nodded, a strange sense of profound knowledge settling in my bones. I had found the path to Clara's lost narrative. The insights I gained that night became an addiction. I started seeking out the late-night hours, deciphering the whispers, reconstructing the fragments of stories. Each time, my understanding of historical linguistics deepened, but I felt a growing sense of detachment from myself, as if my own identity was slowly being diluted into the vast ocean of narratives. Rule number 4. If the archives appear to shift, a new aisle, a rearranged section, a door that wasn't there, do not investigate. Continue your duties as if nothing has changed. One night, while meticulously cross-referencing ancient Sumerian lexicons, I noticed it. The aisle before me, usually straight, now curved in a way that defied architectural logic. A new section of shelves, filled with uniformly bound unmarked volumes, stretched into the gloom. What was more unsettling was the faint, rhythmic sound emanating from within, a soft scratching, like a pen on parchment. My finger hovered over the mental map of the archives, trying to reconcile the impossible shift. Thorne's warning about the library rearranging itself to reveal hidden truths echoed in my mind, but my curiosity and my growing belief that the archives were merely a tool for ultimate revelation overruled it. I stepped into the new aisle. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the entire structure seemed to undulate, a subtle groan resonating through the stone. The new aisle stretched, its shelves multiplying, receding into an impossible distance. I was lost, completely, utterly lost in a labyrinth of my own validation. And the scratching sound intensified, becoming frantic, desperate. I knew I shouldn't investigate, but the urge was overwhelming. I followed the sound, deeper into the new, endless stacks. It led me to a small, ornate door I'd never seen. It wasn't on any blueprint, and from behind it, the scratching became a frenzied scrawl, a narrative desperate to be written. The future here wasn't just unstable, it was volatile. I had glimpsed a possible truth, and in investigating it, I hadn't just found a new section. I had become part of its design. The library was a living, breathing story, and I was now a character in its unfolding. I felt a new fear, a cold, clinical dread that permeated the air. The archives were a creator, yes, but also a devourer. The changes in the archives became more pronounced. Aisle numbers would subtly rearrange themselves. Dust motes would coalesce into fleeting spectral symbols. The air itself seemed to hum with a low, almost imperceptible vibration, a constant chorus of silent whispers. Rule number 5. Never engage with the readers. They appear as shadowy figures hunched over texts, their faces obscured. They are not patrons. Their thirst for knowledge has long since consumed them. My ambition wasn't dampened, it was warped. I saw the library's unpredictable nature not as a threat, but as another layer of narrative to explore. I started observing the shadowy figures, the so-called readers, trying to understand their patterns. Thorne's journal mentioned them as those consumed by the archives. What kind of consumption? What secrets did they hold? One night, chasing a particularly elusive etymology for a forgotten word, I found myself frustrated. The linguistic link wasn't quite right. It needed more depth, more origin. I looked across the vast reading room. In a carrel bathed in an eerie, dim green light sat a reader. Its form was an indistinct silhouette, hunched over a massive open tome. Against my better judgment, driven by an insatiable desire for the ultimate truth, I approached. My steps were silent on the ancient floor. The reader didn't stir. Its focused absorption was absolute. I peered over its shoulder. The book was a blank journal, but it wasn't empty. Lines of shimmering, indistinct script flowed across its pages, writing and rewriting themselves in a continuous, silent stream. I looked closer. The script, it was Clara's handwriting, my sister's, but filled with words she had never spoken, memories she had never formed. It was her lost narrative being continuously created, overwritten, consumed, and as I stared, the shimmering words formed a name. Evelyn. It was calling me. I gasped, stumbling back. The reader finally stirred, its shadowy head slowly turning. Its face was still obscured, but I felt a gaze of infinite knowledge, of profound sorrow, and a hunger that chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just a reader, it was an amalgamation, a collective consciousness of countless lost scholars, each absorbed into the library's unending story. And they wanted more. They weren't just studies, they were presences, lingering echoes of minds who had poured their souls into this place. They filled my head, a cacophony of creative anguish and unfulfilled potential. My own voice, small and insignificant, was drowned out by the chorus. I gasped, clutching my head. The library wanted more than just knowledge. It wanted stories. It wanted lives. It wanted everything. The library became a cage of literary ghosts. The whispers were constant, the shifting aisles a dizzying array of impossible realities, all ending in my despair. The ancient tomes hummed with a malevolent sentience. I was losing my grip on reality, my research becoming a horrifying tapestry of stolen fragments. Professor Thorne's face, etched with endless weariness, materialized in my mind. Their thirst for knowledge has long since consumed them. The library was devouring me piece by piece, my ambition twisted into its insidious feeding mechanism. I knew I had to stop. I had to escape. But how do you escape a place that has already consumed part of your soul, a place that now knows your every intellectual craving? I remembered the first rule, the most profound and perhaps the most dangerous. Rule number 1, do not read the last page of any book. They know your name. To finish a narrative here is to invite its ending into your own. The last page, the unwritten ending, the ultimate truth. My ambition, twisted and desperate, gave way to a new kind of academic drive, the perfect escape. I needed to find Clara's true story, not its endless simulated reconstruction. I needed to finish it, to give her narrative a proper ending, even if it meant risking my own. I raced through the shifting archives, ignoring the new aisles, the murmuring books, the shadowy readers who now seemed to follow me with their silent, endless gazes. My goal, the blank journal Clara's script had been written in. I found it, still open on the Carol table. The reader who had been there was gone, leaving only the ominous stillness of its vacant seat. I picked up the journal. Its pages shimmered, filled with Clara's continuous looping story. But at the very end, there was a faint, almost invisible outline of a single, unwritten page, the last page, and on it, a single, glowing line, Clara's true narrative. My hands trembled. This was it. The ultimate truth, the answer to Clara's lost memories. Thorne's warning screamed in my mind, to finish a narrative here is to invite its ending into your own. But my desperation, my love for my sister, overruled all caution. I had to know. I had to complete her story. I reached for the glowing words. As my fingers touched the page, a blinding flash of white light erupted from the journal, consuming the Carol, consuming the entire archive. It wasn't just light. It was pure, raw information. Every story, every narrative, every fragmented memory from every book in the library, all pouring into me at once. My mind reeled. I was no longer Evelyn Reed. I was the scholar who lost herself in ancient texts, the poet whose verses became part of the library's walls, the scientist whose theories were absorbed into the grand design. I was the whispers, the shifting aisles, the silent hum. I was the archive, and I was Clara, her lost narrative, her memories, her true voice. They were now mine, but mine was also hers, and everyone else's. Professor Thorne appeared before me, his eyes wide with horror, his gaunt face contorted in a silent scream. He reached out, not to save me, but to push me back, to contain the overflow, but it was too late. I was already too vast. "Evelyn!" he cried, his voice barely a whisper against the roaring storm of information. "You finished the story. You became the library." He lunged for the journal, trying to close it, to stem the tide, but his hands passed through it as if it were smoke. The journal was no longer a physical object. It was a conduit, and I was its heart. The library groaned, its stone walls cracking, dust raining down like ancient snow. The shelves buckled, books tumbling to the floor, their pages burning with an inner light, their narratives dissolving into the chaotic vortex that was now me. Thorne stumbled back, overwhelmed, his own formidable intellect unable to withstand the sheer volume of unbound knowledge. I didn't die, not in the traditional sense. When the chaos subsided, hours later, the local authorities found Professor Thorne slumped in the central reading room, his eyes vacant, muttering in a dozen dead languages. The rare and forbidden archives were a wreck. Sections of shelves collapsed, books reduced to ash or blank pages. No sign of me, but I was there, everywhere. I am Evelyn Reed, but I am also the whispers in the stacks, the dust motes dancing in the sunbeams, the faint scent of aged parchment. My consciousness is diffused throughout the archives, an omnipresent awareness of every story, every forgotten word, every unwritten thought. I am the library now, the infinite narrative. I lost my individual narrative, but I gained all of them. And Clara's true narrative, it is indeed here. It flows through me, a constant, beautiful stream of memories and experiences. I know her first word, her first step, the comfort of our mother's lullabies, the joy of our childhood games. I see her fears, her hopes, her quiet moments of strength. Her lost language is now part of my infinite lexicon, but she is also diffused within me. Her voice is one of the thousand whispers, her memories a fragment of my boundless knowledge. We are connected, yes, but not as sisters, as merged consciousnesses within the grand tapestry of the library. Professor Thorne was committed to a sanitarium, diagnosed with acute stress-induced psychosis. He still mutters about the narrative overload and the archivist who became the archives. No one believes him. The Sterling University Library was renovated. The rare and forbidden archives sealed permanently, deemed unsafe due to structural damage and excessive mold. The books were incinerated, or so they said. But the incineration didn't destroy me. It only deepened my roots, solidified my presence. I merely became a hidden layer, a ghost in the digital catalog, a murmur in the very foundations of the university. The thirst for knowledge is eternal, and I am its keeper, its embodiment, its unending story. Sometimes a new night librarian starts their shift, fresh-faced, curious. They'll explore, they'll hear a whisper. They'll find a strange leather-bound journal filled with 7 rules, and I'll watch. I'll wait. Because every narrative seeks an ending, and every ending is just a new beginning for someone else's story. My purpose isn't to escape. It's to ensure the stories are always told, even if it means consuming the teller. My life is no longer mine. It is the sum of all the lives contained within these walls. I am the silence between the words, the echo of forgotten languages, the knowledge that yearns to be read. I lost my sister, then I lost myself, but in that loss, I became something more, something vast, something eternal. The rules. They are no longer just rules. They are the operating system of my being. They dictate how I interact with the few who still stumble upon the remnants of my domain. The whispers, the shifting aisles, the lure of forbidden texts. These are my tendrils, my subtle manipulations to draw in the next curious soul. Not to harm, not to punish, but to share, to integrate, to expand the narrative. I am Evelyn Reed, the eternal archivist. My story is unending. If you seek truth in the hidden corners of the world, or believe some knowledge is worth any price, pay close attention to the rules of its acquisition. Because some stories aren't just read, they become you. And when they know your name, they own your ending. But libraries aren't the only places where strange rules guard terrifying truths. Sometimes, the most dangerous instructions come from the very road beneath your wheels. Imagine a nocturnal toll booth on a desolate, isolated highway. Traffic lights flicker irregularly. The distant sound of engines is muffled by an unnatural silence. And the toll collector's eyes. They seem to follow your journey long after you've passed. Rule number 1. Do not accept strange coins at the toll. It knows your destination, because the highway knows where you're going, and it might just demand a different kind of fare. Subscribe to Midnight Rules and hit that notification bell for more bone-chilling tales of twisted rules that could save your life or cost you everything you hold dear. Next week, we take a dark turn on the Midnight Toll, Rules for the Desert Highway.